No. My wife sent me a text message while I was 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. I didn't see it until we landed in Frankfurt. By then, she had already made her move. The message was 4 sentences long. I want a divorce. I've transferred the investment accounts into my name. Don't bother coming home angry. I read it twice. Then I put my phone in my pocket, picked up my carry-on, and walked to baggage claim. I didn't call her back. I didn't text. I just said, out loud, to no one in particular, "Okay, I should back up. My name is Marcus. I'm 51 years old. I spent 22 years building a career in structural engineering. The kind of work where you learn early that a foundation nobody can see is the most important foundation of all." My wife's name was Diana. We had been married for 16 years. I have a daughter, Alicia, who is 24, from my first marriage. Diana and I have a son together, Nathan, who is 19 and in his second year of college. Diana was 47. She had stopped working full-time about 12 years ago, after Nathan was born. She managed the house. She handled school pickups and dentist appointments, and the holiday cards that I never would have remembered to send. For a long time, that arrangement worked. For a long time, I thought we were fine. I was wrong about that. But I'll get to it. The trip to Frankfurt was a medical infrastructure conference. I'm not a doctor. I work with firms that design hospitals, surgical centers, the kinds of buildings where the wrong measurement doesn't just collapse a wall, it ends a life. The conference ran 4 days. I'd been planning it for 3 months. Diana knew the dates. She had helped me pack. The night before I left, she made dinner. Pasta. A bottle of red wine I had been saving. She seemed warm that evening. She laughed at something I said about a colleague. She kissed me at the door the next morning and told me to text when I landed. I texted when I landed. She replied with a thumbs up. 12 hours later, the divorce message. I found out later that she had been planning it for at least 4 months. Now here's the part that Diana did not know about me. I am a careful man. Not suspicious by nature, not paranoid, but careful. It comes from the work. When you spend your career understanding how systems fail, you start to apply that thinking everywhere. You identify single points of failure. You build redundancies. You document everything. About 6 years ago, I noticed a change in Diana. Small things at first. A new password on her phone. Longer gym sessions. A certain quality of absence even when she was sitting right next to me. I didn't confront her immediately. I paid attention. I kept notes in a journal I stored in my office at work, not at home. 2 years later, I found out about a man named Derek. He worked at her gym. He was 39. I found out through a combination of things I prefer not to detail. But none of it was illegal, and all of it was documented. I did not blow up the marriage that day. I know that might be hard to understand, but I had seen what explosive confrontations do. I had watched my parents tear each other apart when I was 11, screaming in the kitchen, lawyers before Christmas. I decided I was going to be strategic, not emotional. I hired a family law attorney. Her name was Patricia, and she had 30 years of experience and a way of speaking that made you feel like the outcome was already decided in your favor. I sat in her office with my documentation, and she looked at it quietly for a long time. Then she looked up and said, "When do you want to move?" I said, "Not yet." Over the following year, Patricia helped me do several things that were entirely legal and entirely invisible to Diana. First, we reviewed every asset I had brought into the marriage. My father had passed away 8 years ago and left me a life insurance payout and a piece of commercial property in Ohio. I made the mistake of commingling some of that inheritance with our joint accounts, but Patricia helped me document the original source of funds clearly, with bank statements going back to probate. Second, I restructured my professional partnership. I co-own an engineering consulting firm with 2 colleagues. With their agreement, we adjusted the valuation structure in a way that reflected the actual market, not an inflated number Diana's attorney might later wave in front of a judge. Third, and this is the part Diana thought she had gotten ahead of, the investment accounts. We had 3 brokerage accounts. 2 were joint. 1 was in my name only, opened before the marriage, which held a significant portion of what I had built over 20 years. Diana knew about 2 of the 3 accounts. She did not know about the third. When she transferred the 2 joint accounts into her name alone, she believed she had secured the majority of our liquid assets. She had not. The 2 accounts she transferred totaled approximately $340,000. The account she did not know about held just over $890,000. Beyond that, the transfers she made were not clean. You cannot simply move joint brokerage assets into a single name without both account holders authorizing the transfer. What Diana had actually done, with the help of a financial advisor named Derek, yes, the same Derek, was forge my electronic signature on transfer authorization documents. That is wire fraud. That is a federal matter. I did not know this when I landed in Frankfurt. I found out when I called Patricia from my hotel room that evening. She had already been monitoring activity on our joint accounts per our standing agreement. She told me what had happened in a calm, precise voice, the way a surgeon might describe an incision. She made her move, Patricia said. I know, I said. The forgery changes things significantly. What do you need from me? Come home, don't engage with her, don't fight, don't give her anything to use. I flew home 2 days later as scheduled. I did not cut the trip short. I attended my last 2 conference sessions. I had dinner with a colleague from Oslo. I slept 8 hours both nights. Diana met me in the kitchen when I walked in. She was leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. She had clearly rehearsed something. I think it's better if we discuss this like adults, she said. I agree, I said. I set down my bag and poured a glass of water. I've already spoken to an attorney. That's good, I said. You should have representation. She paused. She had expected something else. Anger, maybe. Tears. Some kind of leverage point she could push against. I've already taken steps to protect myself financially, she said. I'm aware, I said. She uncrossed her arms. What does that mean? I looked at her for a moment. 16 years. I thought about the pasta dinner, the wine, the kiss at the door. It means we should let our attorneys handle it from here, I said. I think that's best for everyone. I picked up my bag and walked to the guest room. I closed the door quietly. Over the next 6 weeks, several things happened in sequence. Patricia filed for divorce on my behalf, citing irreconcilable differences. She also filed a separate civil complaint regarding the unauthorized transfer of joint assets. Simultaneously, she referred the forgery evidence to a federal financial crimes unit. I want to be careful here, because the investigation was ongoing for some time, but I will say that Derek's involvement created complications for him that extended well beyond our divorce. The IRS had already been looking at some irregularities in how he managed client funds. Our case became one thread in a much larger fabric. Diana's attorney was good. I want to be honest about that. She argued that the transfers were made in good faith as a protective measure in anticipation of divorce. She argued that Diana had a legitimate claim to a significant portion of our marital estate given 16 years of contribution to the household and my career. She was not wrong about the contribution argument. Patricia acknowledged that clearly, and we did not fight it. What we fought was the forgery, and the hidden asset claim, and the valuation of my firm. The discovery process took 4 months. Diana's attorney requested documentation on every account, every asset, every business interest. Patricia provided it all. Every single document. Clean, organized, cross-referenced. 22 years of a careful man's record-keeping dropped on a conference table. Diana's attorney went quiet for about a week after that. Then she came back with a settlement proposal. Diana would receive the equity in our primary home, which we agreed to sell. She would receive half the value of the 2 joint accounts, minus legal fees associated with the unauthorized transfer. She would receive spousal support for 5 years on a declining scale. She would receive nothing from my premarital inheritance assets, nothing from the firm, and nothing from the account she had never known about. In exchange, the civil complaint regarding the transfers would be resolved through the settlement rather than litigated. The federal matter regarding Derek was separate and beyond our agreement to resolve. I sat with Patricia in her office when she walked me through the final numbers. She thought she had you, Patricia said. She thought I wasn't paying attention, I said. Were you the whole time? I thought about that. About 6 years of quiet observation. About a journal and a desk drawer at work. About a conversation with an attorney 4 years before I actually needed her. I was hoping I was wrong, I said. Patricia nodded slowly. That's the saddest part, isn't it? It was. I want to be honest about that too. There is a version of this story where I tell you I felt triumphant sitting in that office. I did not. I felt tired. I felt the specific exhaustion of having spent years preparing for something you desperately hoped would never happen. I felt the weight of a dinner I had enjoyed 3 days before my wife executed a plan she had been building for months. The sale of the house closed in the fall. I moved into a condo in the city. closer to my office. Nathan came to visit on weekends when he was home from school. He was quiet about the divorce at first, careful the way young people sometimes are when they love both their parents and don't want to choose. I didn't ask him to choose. I told him his mother and I had made decisions that were ours to make and that none of it changed what I felt about him. He cried a little when I said that. I'm not ashamed to say I did too. Alicia, my daughter from my first marriage, called me the week the divorce finalized. She had always had a complicated relationship with Diana, the particular friction of a stepmother and a daughter who remembered someone else in that role. She didn't say I told you so. She just said, "Are you okay, Dad?" "I'm going to be," I said. "That's not the same as yes." "No," I said. "It's not." She flew in for a weekend in November. We ate bad Thai food and watched 3 movies, and she fell asleep on my couch with a blanket I'd had since my 20s. I sat in the chair across from her and thought about foundations, about what holds when everything else shifts. Derek, as I mentioned, had his own reckoning that was entirely separate from mine. I did not pursue him personally. I had considered it, in the darker months of the process, when the anger was loudest. Patricia had gently redirected me each time. "Focus on your outcome," she would say. "Let the system do its work on his." She was right. The system did its work. I don't know exactly what happened to him, and I decided at some point that I didn't need to. That particular door I closed and left closed. What I have now is something I didn't expect to value as much as I do. I have a condo that is exactly as organized as I want it to be. I have a firm that is growing carefully. I have a son who texts me memes at 11 at night and a daughter who calls every Sunday. I have a journal on my desk that I no longer need to write in, because the thing I was documenting is resolved. I have quiet. I know that's not dramatic. I know some of you watching this want a bigger ending, a more visible justice, a moment where the walls came down and the reckoning was loud and public and satisfying in the way movie endings are satisfying. But I've spent my career understanding that the most important structures are the ones you can't see. The foundations sunk 30 feet below the surface. The load-bearing walls inside the frame. The work that happens long before anyone takes a photograph of the finished building. Diana thought she knew the floor plan of our life together. She didn't know what was underneath it. I want to say one more thing, and I want to say it carefully. I am not telling the story to celebrate what happened to her. I'm not telling it as a warning to women or a lesson about who wins divorce. I'm telling it because I spent a long time thinking the careful thing to do was to stay quiet, stay watchful, and hope things changed. And I want anyone out there who has been quiet for too long, watching something quietly fall apart, to know that there is a version of preparation that is not cynical, that is not vengeful. It is just the work of a man who understood that some foundations have to be built in secret, because the person you're building them against is already planning to take the house. I didn't want to be right, but I was ready. And that, in the end, was enough. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing to Sadness Stories. We share these because they're real, because they're hard, and because sometimes the only thing that helps is knowing someone else found their way through. I'll see you in the next one.